Since I've started using it, it's been amazing. And I wanted to share that with you in case it can help you out if you didn't know how to use it. And even if you do use custom modes, maybe there's some things you didn't know about. So I really looked into this a while ago after a friend told me who shoots with Nikon that he had like a button that he could program where he could just click the button and it would switch to slow shutter mode or, slow shutter settings, and then he could click it and it would go back. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. So it's very useful, very helpful in a lot of different types of photography, not just sports, but portraits or still life, a bunch of different things that you can use this for. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, I'm just going to click this button right here, and you can see if I am shooting there at a high shutter speed and I click it once, boom, it goes to C1, which is a slow shutter setup, and then I can click it back to where it was. So all I have to do, click that button, and it just shoots back and forth between those settings. So basically what the custom modes do is they just kind of save settings on your camera, and then if you click to C1 or C2 or C3, it just auto switches and applies all those settings that you had saved to that mode. So whatever you want the C1 settings to be, you set up your camera that way with the shutter and the f-stop, the ISO, could be the autofocus or the white balances, all the settings, whatever you want to use, set that up, and then you hit register on C1. So it's very useful, like I said, for sports. If you're doing slow shutters, I can go slow shutter, fast shutter, switch really quickly. But it can be used for portraits and weddings and still lifes, anything like that. Because say you're doing portraits and you have lighting and you have a specific white balance that you use with maybe one light, or it's different with another light. You can say, okay, C1 is going to be for my daylight balanced lights. So every time you go and use those lights, you set it to C1, and boom, your color temperature is correct. And then you're probably shooting RAW, so you can also set up that it always shoots RAW on C1. And maybe C2, you're actually shooting sports and you're shooting JPEG, so you set that JPEGs to C2, and you see where this is going. You can set up any specific things that you're using over and over and over again for different events or different portraits, things that you're shooting. So you can change autofocuses, you can change white balance, you can probably set up a multiple exposure setting, so you're just clicking straight to that. You don't have to fumble through all the menu to get to what you're trying to use. And it can also save you headaches of forgetting to switch between RAW and JPEG. I've done that when I've gone from shooting sports to shooting weddings with my wife. I've said it before, I feel a little bad, but I accidentally forgot to change from JPEG to RAW, where if I had a custom mode, I'd just say like, oh, when I go shoot weddings, I set it to C3, and it's there ready for RAW, and it's there with any other specific settings I need for weddings. All right, when setting up the custom modes, hit the menu, go to the yellow little wrench section here under the settings, go over to the last section. This is typically for Canon. I'm sure it's pretty similar for any other brands of cameras. Go to custom shooting mode, register settings, and you're gonna hit custom shooting modes, C1. All right, I'm gonna cancel because I already have stuff set in there, which I'll show you. So if I would have pressed OK, it would show anytime I go to C1, it'll have every setting here that I used right now in that setting. So you can see if I click to C1, so you can see I'm at 1/15th of a second. My ISO is really low because this I'm using for panning shots. So this was during the daytime, so my ISO had to be really low. But if I was at night, I can still change these settings and bump that ISO up a lot higher. And of course, I don't have a lens attached right now, so there's no f-stop, but I can change that f-stop as well. And then if I click the button one more time, it goes back to manual and whatever settings I had before I clicked that. I can also hit the mode button on top, and I can choose custom mode right there, and it'll go to that as well. The best thing you can do when setting up these custom modes is just think about the settings you're going to use all the time. So you shoot in the daylight a lot, and you're outside and you have certain settings that you're going to use most of the time. You can say, oh, when it's sunny out, I'm going to custom mode 1. That way you know that your white balance is correct, your shutter is pretty high, your ISO, maybe it's down to 400, and there it's ready to go. And if you're shooting sports, right, make sure it's on continuous, because you can change any of these things and it will register with those custom modes. Now another setting in here with the custom modes is this auto update set. So I have it enabled, which all that means is that if I go to my custom mode and I change it while I'm shooting, So let's say I change these things and I switch away from it and I switch back. It's going to keep those settings. So it's going to save that anytime I click to go back to C1 from any other mode. It's going to keep those settings. Now if I turn auto update to disable, now if I'm at C1 and so we were at 1/60th, so we were at 1/60th of a second, 1000 ISO, let's change that to 1/40th. Now if I click away from that and click back, it's back to 1/60th. So if you have the auto update set to disable, anytime you switch these settings while you're shooting in the custom mode, it won't remember those settings. It'll actually just go back to the original settings you had. So if I switch back to manual, you can see that, and then back to custom, it goes back to the initial settings it has, which is good for when, let's say, you're shooting in a studio and you're using essentially the same settings every time you start. That way you can get a baseline of, let's say you're shooting at 1/60th and you probably want to shoot down really low if you're shooting portraits or something, a low ISO, and you want to make sure you're shooting in RAW, right? You can set that up as your initial settings, and then let's see, boom, let's register that to C1. Okay, so now if I go and shoot sports and I'm shooting, really high ISOs, really high f-stops, and I'm shooting in JPEG, and I was like, oh shoot, I actually did that on my custom mode, but I didn't have it auto update. When I switched to manual and I switch back to C1, it resets to 160, 100 ISO, resets to RAW. So it's good to have this auto update disabled whenever you want to use the same exact settings every time you start a new shoot. So while all the Canon cameras that I have the capability to shoot in custom modes, only a few of them actually you can dedicate a singular button to click through the custom modes. Now it's still helpful to set up custom modes. You just have to hit mode and switch to custom mode. So it's just not as quick, but it's still very helpful. So as I said before, on some of these Canon cameras, you can use a single button to click between the custom mode and the manual mode. So let me show you how to set that up. Click this little Q button, and you can go to your custom control menu here. And depending on what camera you have, you can set up the dials or the buttons it might ask you, but choose which buttons to set up. So I like to put mine at the multi-function button, and now whenever I click that button up top, it's going to switch back and forth to the custom mode and back. All right, I hope you've seen the light on custom shooting modes and why they're very helpful, and especially if you can use that single button to switch between. It is a game changer, and it just allows you to do a lot more in a much quicker amount of time without missing anything during the game or during whatever shoot you're doing, to kind of save you some of those headaches. And I'm sure I missed something, so please let me know in the comments if there's anything that you use custom modes for, or any other settings in your camera that you've found recently and you're just like, this is amazing, more people need to use this. Please let me know so I can use it. Hope it helps, and see you next time.